Hi all, welcome to PowerShell for Penetration Testers at Pentester Academy. In this video, we continue our discussion on functions in PowerShell. So let's move on. We will have a look at switch parameters in PowerShell, returning values from PowerShell functions, and scope of variables and functions. So first of all, let's have a look at the switch parameters. Let's quickly define a function let's call it switchable. Let's declare two variables and a switch variable. Let's call it flip. Let's perform an addition. As the name suggests, the switch variable could be used to switch or change the functionality if the variable is defined. So we can say if $flip $a minus $p. That is, if the switch variable is defined, the functionality should change. First of all, let's try switchable with normal functionality. As you can see, both of the parameters were added, and let's declare or let's use flip and see what happens. As you can see, this part was also executed. So the switch variable is very useful when you are trying to do multiple tasks from within a function without having to change the functionality or the variables or reusing or redefining the function. We will see detailed usage of this in later scripts where we need to decide on the functionality inside a function based on a single parameter. Now notice that we have not been returning anything from a function up to now. For example, if we call switchable the output is stored in this variable or any other variable we want without any return value. This is so because PowerShell returns an array of all the outputs or all the results from a function which gets stored in any variable in which the output is received. PowerShell does contain a return statement, but it is really not required to return values from a function. Now let's quickly discuss scope of variables and functions in PowerShell. Let's continue with the example of switchable, and let's define a new function called new, and let's reuse the value of a and b here Instead, let's quickly have a look at it this way. Let's call a variable a and assign it, let's call it var1, and assign it a value of 33. Let's quickly create a function fun1 which assigns a value of 22 to variable 1. As you can see, we are using it again here. Now if we call variable 1, it's 33. If we call function 1, the value is 22. And if we create another function, let's call it fun2, and again we use var1 here, its value is 11. Why so? Because here variable 1 was a global function for the current PowerShell session. So when we called var1 here, the value was the initial one. Then when we called function 1 here, var1's value was the local one, and when we called function 2, it was the local one for function 2. Another interesting thing here is this: var1 is still 33. This means that any variable declared inside a function or used inside a function, because we need not declare a variable separately in PowerShell, it gets initialized, it gets declared on its initialization. So this variable is different from this or this. That is all we need to know for now. So variable scope for variables or parameters in PowerShell is limited to the function in which they are declared or they are initialized. Now, scope of functions. A quick note here is PowerShell does not support function overloading at all. That means if we declare a function 2 here and say now if we call function 2, the previous value will be overwritten. Now we can have a look at the functions we have created using the function namespace or provider. As you can see, all the functions available could be used, could be browsed like a file system. As you can see, we have the functions we declared right now, but these functions are local to the current PowerShell session. As you can see, fun1, fun2, etc. are not available in another new PowerShell session. To make them permanent, we need to make changes to the PowerShell profile, which we may have a look at later on. So that is all for the basics of functions. Now let's move on quickly to some exercises. Create a function which accepts name of a process or service and then stops it based on that name passed to it. Once it is done, use a switch variable in that function to add the ability of stopping a service as well. Okay, so you need to first create a function to stop a process and then add the ability to stop a service. Once these two tasks are done, add another parameter to the function, accept and call that PID. If a PID is passed to the function, no attempt should be made to stop a service, just stop a process matching that PID. So try it, should be fun. And if you are enjoying your time at Pentester Academy, please do recommend us to your friends and colleagues.